Trevor Ashby's farm near Mount Gambier in South Australia looked nondescript at first glance. It looked like any other farm with its livestock peacefully grazing in the fields. But hidden in the paddock, amidst the cows and horses, is a deep sinkhole that leads to a wondrous cave filled with exceptionally clear water and hidden mysterious chambers. The sinkhole, known as the Shaft, soon became a world-class diving site where many curious divers ventured in to discover the unknown. But not everyone who dove in swam back up. In 1973, a careless accident deep in the shaft claimed the lives of 4 recreational scuba divers. The public outcry that followed this tragedy was influential enough that it led to the formation of the Cave Divers Association of Australia. The entrance to the sinkhole was discovered in 1938 on a farm near Allendale East, a few kilometers south of Mount Gambier. The owner's grandfather was plowing a paddock when his horse put its hoof through the soil. Finding a deep hole, the farmer and his family tried to fill it up with rubble, but they soon realized they have no hope of success. The hole, which was only 1 foot across then, had seemed like a bottomless pit that no amount of rubble they threw in can seem to fill up. They had no choice but to leave it alone. Seasonal rain loosened up and collapsed the soil around the hole, making it bigger. By the 1960s, it was already 2.6 feet across, big enough for an adult to squeeze through. That's exactly what a local diver did. He climbed down the hole and discovered a 17-meter wide lake chamber. Swimming down the crystal clear water, he made the first descent into the cave at a depth of 21 meters. News about this amazing discovery quickly spread. The promise of exploring deeper chambers and finding new paths and corridors under the Earth's surface enticed many divers. Like bees to honey, they quickly swarmed the little farm. Before anyone knew it, the sinkhole had already become a popular world-class diving site. Later, it was called the Shaft because on particularly sunny days, a brilliant stream of sunlight would penetrate the entrance and reflect off the cave walls, making for a spectacular, otherworldly sight. On May 26, 1973, after an estimated 8,000 dives had already been made in the shaft, a group of young divers arrived on Mount Gambier. They were John Bockerman, Peter Burr, Larry Reynolds, Gordon Roberts, Robert Smith, and siblings Christine, Glenn, and Stephen Millott. These young thrill seekers, with ages ranging from 19 to 28, planned to go cave diving in the shaft. Their 9th member, Joan Harper, decided at the last minute that she didn't want to go diving and would instead remain beside the sinkhole, making hot soup and providing assistance when necessary. The group arrived on the farm on May 27th, excited for the day ahead. They quickly signed the farm's guest book before heading to the paddock, where the sinkhole lies between the grass. That day, the group was able to complete a dive, extending a shot line about 46 meters into the water and reaching what is known as the rock pile, a central pile of limestone rubble about 40 meters directly below the sinkhole entrance. They explored the perimeter around the rock pile before returning to the surface. With their shot line in place, the group had no worries about getting back the next day to continue exploring. The morning of May 28th saw the group back in the shaft after refilling their 72 cubic feet cylinders at Mount Gambier. They were as excited to explore the beautiful world underground as they had been the previous day. Never in their worst nightmare did they think that only half of them would be able to see the light of day again. Illuminating the top of the rock pile was the natural light coming from the open shaft above. Inside the light's border, known as the edge, is what divers generally considered the boundary for recreational diving. Anywhere beyond the edge was dark, covered in loose silt and limestone rubble, and leads to deeper depths where the effects of nitrogen narcosis become extreme if the breathing gas is not diluted by helium. It wasn't known who among them decided it was a good idea for the group to go beyond the edge and why, but against common sense and all established safety guidelines, they did. From the outset, it can be said that this dive would end in disaster. They were lucky on their first dive, and perhaps they would have been lucky on this second dive too, if they had only stayed within the recreational area. But they were young and foolhardy. Intrepid, Chief Superintendent Wallace B. Budd would call them, later on a report about the accident. These young people plunged down a narrow and downward slope from one side of the main room. It was dark, their only light coming from the limited scope of their flashlights. They didn't have individual safety guidelines that they could follow back to the surface, nor did they have a designated diving partner to look out for each other. Despite all these risks, they continued on. For 4 of them, the moment they've left the boundaries of light was the moment they forfeited their lives. Divers monitor their air and body condition the moment they enter the water. Robert Smith is an experienced diver. At the edge of the rock pile, he started feeling symptoms of narcosis. He immediately signaled his group that he would go back to the top. The group signaled back that they would continue on. Smith circled the top of the rock pile for 8 minutes before he spotted Glenn Millott. Like Smith, Millott had been monitoring his air and knew that he needed to come up. He wanted to warn his sister Christine, as he knew her air too would run out, but they got separated before he could do so. Smith and Millott surfaced together and found that another diver, Larry Reynolds, had already returned before them. Half a minute later, Peter Burr also surfaced, almost out of air. Knowing the others would have similar insufficient air, Millott grabbed a spare tank and dove back in. He descended to a depth of 69 meters where he found his brother Steven's flashlight and camera. Steven himself was nowhere to be found. The loose silt on the cave floors had long been disturbed by the divers' movements. The silt billowed up, and it was clouding the water, dropping the visibility to near zero. It was impossible to continue searching. Having no choice, Millott had to decompress before returning to the surface, where he found that an ambulance had arrived. At one point during the following chaos, Peter Burr returned to the cave for one more look, but he came up with nothing. It didn't take long for the 4 divers to realize that when authorities came, they would not be looking for survivors, but for bodies. The police underwater recovery squad began a search of the cave the day after the accident. They went down to a depth of 61 meters, but came up empty-handed. A second attempt was made on the 30th of May, but it was also unsuccessful. Eventually, the police had to postpone the search. They were much underprepared for the complexity of the dive, Chief Inspector Budd reported. To not fall to the same fate as those they endeavored to find, the team had to quit well ahead and sought help from their naval counterparts. The following months were spent on rigorous training. On 22 January the following year, the farm's owner allowed a film crew documenting cave dives in the lower southeast to enter the sinkhole. Using professional lighting equipment, the team illuminated the cave like daylight. It was then that a technician looking in the direction of 2 teammates found what appeared to be a third body behind them. The body appeared to be wearing a wetsuit. Startled, the team quickly averted the light and surfaced together to report their findings. The police went in the water the next morning and retrieved the body of Stephen Millott from a depth of 15 meters, floating under a ledge against the cave roof. The police searched further, but found nobody else. On March 9, 1974, RG Trainer and a team of divers entered the shaft, equipped with considerably improved gear. Their dive took them to a depth of 56 meters, where Trainer found 2 bodies, one beneath the other. They were Christine Millott and Gordon Roberts. According to Reynolds, he saw the 2 attempt to swim back to the rock pile, but instead of swimming along the slope where the group had gone down earlier, the 2 swam straight up to the dome in the ceiling, which had no exit. Reynolds said the 2 had looked frightened, probably knowing that their air would be exhausted soon. 20 feet deeper, Trainer also located the body of John Bockerman beneath a rock ledge. One of the surviving divers said they saw Bockerman strongly swimming downward. He was likely already suffering from severe narcosis and didn't realize that he was swimming towards death. Trainer attempted to move the body into a more accessible position, but soon gave up knowing he was running out of air. The following days, several attempts were made to recover the bodies, but it wasn't until March 11th that they were able to do so. Christine Millott and Gordon Roberts were recovered from a depth of 59 meters, but Bockerman's body at a depth of 66 meters was more difficult to recover because of its extreme depth and position. Several attempts were made, but the divers had to abort as they were starting to suffer from narcosis. 1 month later, they tried again, and finally, on April 9, 1974, Bockerman's body was recovered. It was 11 months and 11 days after the accident. The group's complete disregard for safety procedures caused many public outcries. 4 lives lost due to recklessness. Similar incidents occurred in other sinkholes around the former lower southeast, causing 11 fatalities. A government inquiry on the safety of scuba diving in sinkholes on May 29 led to the formation of the Cave Divers Association of Australia, Incorporated, CDAA, in September 1973. Testing programs were introduced by the agency in 1974, which tested the diving ability of prospective divers. Any persons not assessed were not allowed near the sinkholes. Later, these programs were replaced by a training system consisting of 3 levels of qualification: deep cavern, cave, and advanced cave. To this day, the sinkholes, particularly the shaft, remain closed to the public. If you have followed this story to this point, I would like to say a big thank you. If you like this kind of story, don't forget to hit the like button and leave a comment below. For more of this type of content, please click on the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell so you will be notified when another video is posted. Until next time, be cautious and don't ever lose your sense of wonder.